Whatever your way of learning is, learn, pay attention. But I still think it comes down to an element of passion, as opposed to something that's outside of you and it doesn't interest in you. Why would you learn an instrument if you're not really curious and passionate about what it is and why you want to learn it and whatnot?
Ralph, I had the chance at the age of 23 in 1976 to come out to California, and I signed up for the Dick Grove Music Workshop. This was an incredible school that the vision of Dick Grove was amazing what he had.
That's right.
And every Saturday they would have different artists come in and clinicians come in. And we had Louis Bellson, Jeff Porcaro, Jim Keltner, and you were one of the artists. And when I came to that class and sat there, and it was a small class, what you shared and how you played, and then I started getting more into what you were doing, and then following you in the Don Ellis band. It was amazing how inspired I was then, and with all that you continue to do, how inspired I continue to be from you. So I thank you so much for all that you are doing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Where did music start for you? Where did drumming enter your life?
High school, I had a teacher, Eugene Graves, inspiring conductor, drummer himself, conducted the symphonic band, which I was playing clarinet in, which I had started at 8. So I had my reading together. I knew how to play in an ensemble. But drums were beginning to be attractive to me, and so I was watching the drummers, in the jazz band, and got a chance to once in a while go back into the percussion section and play there. One thing led to another. The opportunity came when I was doing this shopping mall gig outdoors one day, and I was in this little band. I was playing clarinet, but then the drummer did not show up. But the drums showed, so I got a chance to sit down and play, and that was it.
So had you had any experience playing drums before that?
No.
So you sat down, you played?
Yeah.
What was the feeling like when you did that?
I felt like I knew what to do, because I'd watch, I'd listen. I was always into music, listening at home. My parents, thank God, listened to a lot of ragtime, Dixieland, Pete Fountain, so Jack Sperling, and of course Buddy Rich, and the like. So I had an earful of stuff that I was listening to, not only for the clarinet, but for drums as well. So this is what taught me at first, and I had my reading skills together too. So I learned about form in music and playing with an ensemble, and so it was one of those things.
Oh, fantastic! It's amazing when you mention certain names, and that's kind of what the interviews is about here. Is that when you mention names that influenced you, we want that next generation to go and research those names.
Right.
A name like Jack Sperling. Jack was a dear friend, and he was just played the Dean Martin show for all those years. So.
Yeah, it was a great studio musician.
And how they played, we'd go and we'd listen to the fills from the Dean Martin show for the drums and analyze it. So you were tapping into some interesting people at that time at an early age.
Joe Marella was also a big influence. I was way into Dave Brubeck, and of course, I guess that's where I got introduced to odd meters. Was listening to Dave Brubeck.
So were you taking lessons at that time on drums at all?
No, I was just in the garage playing along to records, listening, kind of learning what Joe was doing, getting a sense of how does that 5 feel, and how does Joe doing across the bar in the 3/4 thing, it was all those sorts of things. They were interesting to me. So, I guess I just had a knack for those kinds of things.
Well, that's a certain mindset. I mean, you have such control over odd feelings and odd times in playing. I mean, it is so comfortable for you, where many of us, and I say to myself, we got to work at it.
Sure.
You really take ownership of that really fast, and with the Ellis band, so let's go back a second. So now you're playing professionally at a certain point. Where'd that come in?
Okay, well, I got more experience at the College of San Mateo, junior college, and that's where I got my first professional experience, playing in a casual band, but with great musicians, with great arrangements. And so we were working the clubs and hotels in San Francisco, and summer on the Russian River. So I was 19, 20, getting professional experience playing with the great players in San Francisco. Then I went to, at the time it was called San Jose State College. Now it's, Cal State San Jose. Again, a great jazz program, a great symphonic band program. The band director, Dwight Cannon, turned us all on to Don Ellis, Don's first record, Live at Monterey, and we were ecstatic. What's this stuff? Completely unusual. So he said, I'm inviting Don up to play with our band. So, it's like in high school when Rafael Mendez came and played with our high school band. Now Don Ellis is coming and playing with our jazz band. And so when Don came, I got a chance to play the rehearsal. Why? Because his drummer, Steve Bohannon, missed the flight.
Oh, is that amazing?
There's my first introduction to Don, his first introduction to me, Of course, Steve did make the concert, and I played second drums because there were always at least 2 drummers in Don's band, sometimes more.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. I mean, I was
How'd that rehearsal
thrilled.
go? How'd that go? What was that like?
Well, you know, I could read. For some reason, I kind of understood the concept that he was going for. I had listened a lot to the music beforehand to get a sense of what it sounded like, how it felt, and all that. I still was a novice at the whole thing, you know, and I thought, well, okay, I'm doing okay. You know, I'm not doing what Steve Bohannon was doing at the time. And I would really admire this guy. He was just fabulous. Don goes away. I'm thrilled with his experience. 6 months later, Don calls me on the phone. What? I'm in the Bay Area, right? And he's in LA, and he's saying, would you like to come down and audition for the band? Out of the blue, it was like, wait a minute. LA's full of drummers. What are you talking about? You're calling me.
He heard something.
He heard something. He heard potential. You know, I asked him later, well, you know, why did you reach out to me when you had all these drummers in LA? And, you know, at the time, not a lot of drummers were doing what he did.
Right.
They weren't interested in doing what he did.
Right.
Steve had moved on. He was getting ready to join the NORAD band. Unfortunately, he was killed in a car accident on his way.
Oh, my Lord.
21 years old. What a loss. It was really horrible. Don thought, I need somebody young and with potential because, you know, I want to hang on to somebody for a while. So I came down and auditioned for the band. January 1, 1968. That's a long time ago. You can't imagine how nervous I was on the airplane. I didn't know what I was walking into. Of course, the audition was on a gig, packed house club called Ellis Island, coincidentally. So halfway through the first set, he calls me up in the bandstand, and I'm sitting now in Steve Bohannon's chair. First time ever playing with Don's band. I gave myself a C- if I was to give myself a grade. Don took me to his office at the end of the gig and said, well, what do you think? And that was it. Moved to LA a month later, and off you go.
That is incredible. What kind of preparation did you have to do, aside from listening to the music? Did you chart things out? Did you?
I didn't chart anything out. I think I probably had the music. He probably sent me some music, or I had the music, you know, from the experience with him coming up and playing. So I had a chance to read some of the music. I kind of was familiar with his approach to it. And then I did a lot of listening. You know, once he invited me down, I was all over this, you know, the LPs, getting as comfortable as I could with it, and I hope he picks that one or that one. You know, of course he picked one that I was not so easy with, but still, I made it through. There were no train wrecks.
And who were some of the other drummers that you met up in that band?
Joe Porcaro, Mark Stevens, Alan Estes, Chino Valdez, of course Steve Bohannon. They were the guys that were sort of breaking new ground. You know, they thought it was really interesting what Don was doing. Plus, it was a gig, you know, and that band was on the road and doing some different things. This is, of course, when Stan Kenton was on the road, and Maynard Ferguson, and Buddy Rich, and Count Basie, and all of them, you know.
That's amazing. You have such control over the instrument in so many different styles and in so many different time signatures. How did that all come about? How did you develop all that?
Playing with Don. I took some lessons with Jarreau, a gentleman from Pasadena who passed away a couple years ago. Don studied with him, Emil Richards studied with him, Joe Porcaro studied with him. He was instrumental in showing me the sort of the Indian concept of rhythm. Singing concept, counting concept, grouping concept, cycles as opposed to metrics. And that's what Don was doing. One story I like to share with my students is, you know, Don would count off a tune. For example, he would go, takita, takidimi, takita, takidimi, taka. That was the count off to the tune, all right? Well, those are groups. Takita is a 3, takidimi is a 4, another takita, another takidimi, and a taka. You add all that up, it's 16. It's a 4/4. Takita, takidimi, takita, takidimi, taka. But Don was interested in rhythm more than metric. The beat. Yeah, you could fit that to the beat, and it, you know, fits nicely in 4/4. But he wanted to impress upon us the rhythmic thing as bring it up to the equal to the metric. You know, right now we have the beat, and then we lay the beat over the top lay the rhythm over the top. Right? And we learn how to, you know, syncopate, but we usually relate everything to the beat that it's on. So 1E, a 2E, a 3E, and a 4E, and a would be the normal way we would count that. Well, Don taught me how to count cyclically, numbers. And that's what Jarreau was into. And so I learned a lot of the Indian techniques that they use, a concept called diminution, which is compression, augmentation, which is expansion, T-high, which is a way to end your phrases with a cyclic idea. I mean, it was, so I was learning that stuff. Chino Valdez was also actually a Cuban congist who also played trumpet. Smart man. After my audition with Don, he said, come to the bar with me. I got to tell you a couple things. So he actually gave me maybe my first lesson in how to think about this stuff. So I had people, and then Don, of course, helped me out a lot.
And Don was a drummer.
Don ended up being a drummer. He always was enthralled with drums.
Yeah.
You know, he was a Buddy Rich fan, so he practiced and studied, and I think he was a Freddie Gruber guy, and eventually he came to one rehearsal, and there was his drum set. Now he became the third drum set in the band. Incredible. So there was me, player behind me, and then Don, and he would, you know, obviously go back and forth from trumpet to that, but yeah. He was like a kid on the drums. He really was.
But what great enthusiasm, what a wonderful atmosphere to be in.
He had a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah, and the band always sounded incredible.
Well, you know, that's an interesting point. It was totally unique, and yeah. I always said it could have been better. Because what you had a core group of musicians in the band. Milcho Levio, the pianist.
Right.
He wasn't always the pianist, but he was a main guy. Bass players, myself, the other drummers. We dug deeper into the concepts and into the music and learned a little bit more. The horn players, they just sort of jumped on board and tried to play and read, you know, the best they could. But they didn't really study the concepts, so I always thought it could have been better.
Interesting.
The band could have been tighter. We were under-rehearsed.
Yeah.
We didn't rehearse enough because the music was just too hard.
Yeah.
We made up for it with enthusiasm.
So now you're in LA.
Yeah.
Are there other jobs coming in from that also?
Well, once you're in LA, you know, things start to happen, and so, you know, I'm playing with Don in and out of town. I'm starting to get called by other drummers saying, I want to learn what you're doing.
Yeah.
So people like Carlos Vega and Dave Krieger and many other great drummers were calling me and saying, can I take some lessons? You know, and so I said, okay. So I started teaching. And then I was starting to get, you know, busier in town with rehearsal bands, mainly rehearsal bands, you know, getting people to know who I am, you know, the fact that they could count on me. I could read, I could pretty much play any style, thank God, because of my background. And so, yeah, you start, you know, making your inroads that way.
So those rehearsal bands was the ultimate of networking at that time.
That was networking.
You're meeting all these different people, and they're hearing you play. They know exactly what you do.
Yeah.
And as other musicians hear about other gigs,
that's it.
You're getting the calls.
Word of mouth. You know, you sit down, you do a good job, they remember that. You do a bad job, they remember that.
Right. You know, we speak about word of mouth. We have the internet and all the social media. Yeah. Nothing beats word of mouth.
I still think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So where to next now at this particular point? Now you're teaching. Are you teaching at a studio? You're teaching.
No, I'm teaching out of my home. Again, you know, gigging around town, jamming a lot. You know, going to somebody's house, you know, 11 o'clock at night and jamming until 3 o'clock in the morning, just playing.
Yeah.
I mean, the playing opportunities were really great then, and there was so much enthusiasm to play.
Yeah.
I mean, those were great times. You know, the 70s was really a great period of activity in town. It had nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
It was just, let me get better, you know. So I really got my styles together. I love jazz, so, you know, I've always played jazz, so a lot of the jams were more like in a jazz context as opposed to rock and roll or whatever. But I really felt like I really was starting to develop, you know, my skills outside of playing with Don Ellis.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, at that time in '76, when I heard you play and started to understand who you were, you were really at a high level there, and you've continued to learn and grow, which is to be studied. You really should be studied at that point. You continue this path of constantly to grow and learn. Where's that come from?
Inside. Where does it come from, you know? And having inspiring people around you, or that you're playing with, people you like to play with. And then, you know, opportunities started to happen. So at a certain point, when I left Don's band, which was 1973-ish, I guess, I was thinking at that point, I'm going to try to stay in town and work my way into the studios, because it was a pretty active scene there.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, George Duke calls me up and says, look, Frank Zappa's looking for a drummer. He's seen many, many drummers. He hasn't found one yet. Maybe you need to go down and check it out. It had never occurred to me that I wanted to do that. You know, I really wasn't even that familiar with Frank's music at the time. But I thought, well, what the heck? You know, after playing with Don, it's like, I think I can do anything now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's like, okay, I'm confident. You know, I could fail, but I'm pretty confident. So I went in, and Frank ran me through the paces. You know, he had me read some stuff, had me play some odd meters, had me play some grooves. The band was there. I played for about 45 minutes. He offered me the gig on the spot. So I had everything that he needed at that moment. He realized, I can work with this guy. Yeah, maybe he didn't read 100% the Black Page, or it wasn't the Black Page at the time, that came later. It was something called the Bebop Tango. And you know, Frank's music is black, really black.
Yeah, you know, when you say black, for those that don't know,
Lots of notes.
That means there's so many notes on
There's
the page.
so many notes on the page.
You don't see any white space. Exactly right.
That's right.
You know, with the next generation, they don't understand certain terms, and I want them to understand the fact that you're looking at music that is as intense as can be.
It doesn't get more intense than that.
Like Bartok influence.
Yeah, Bartok, Stockhausen, you know, Alban Berg. I mean, Frank was such a unique character.
Yeah,
you know, borrowing from late 19th and early 20th century, you know, serious music with R&B and rock and roll, blues.
Incredible. So what do you think you took away from working with Zappa?
A very challenging job in many respects. We would play 2.5 hour concerts a night. So it was on the one hand physically debilitating.
Yeah.
I'm a small guy, and I do remember first getting on the band, I needed to get stronger. You know, I played pretty strong with Don Ellis, but this was another level, you know, and so practicing on the pillow in the hotel room, you know, that was kind of my routine, and I did get stronger, and I was able to withstand the long concerts, because Frank would basically segue from one thing to the next. There was very little space, you know, unless he had a monologue, which were every night totally brilliant, and playing with Ruth Underwood, Ian Underwood, George Duke, Jean-Luc Ponty, Tom and Bruce Fowler. I mean, the band was extraordinary.
See, that's why I want listeners to really understand. Go up and look at the name George Duke, Jean-Luc Ponty. Look at what these people have done. These are names that I want them to make sure that they understand that.
Right.
These are deep musicians that you're working with at this time, playing deep music at very intense pace.
Very intense pace at a very high level.
Yeah.
Frank did like to rehearse because it required that, so that when we got to the bandstand, there were no mistakes. Even if there was, he would probably stop the band and start again.
Really?
He'd, you know, apologize to the audience, and one more time, you know, and then he'd count it off faster. So Frank had his way with that, but I really liked the whole effort that people had to make in that band, because it was such a high level and such a unique band.
And what was he like as a leader? What was he like?
Frank?
Yeah.
Intense, demanding, not necessarily the friendliest guy. But that's okay. I wasn't going to go out and have a beer with Frank. That was never my intention. He was, to me, a figure that I wanted to work with. I was willing to work with him, for him, and do whatever, because I knew this was something special. And I had a unique opportunity here to be part of this band and record and be on the road and all that.
Was it at the time you were with Zappa, were there other gigs you were doing?
In the off time, yes, I was beginning to get busier in town. Things were starting to happen, you know, a little job here and there. I was playing clubs with different people. Again, it was an active time. I met a lot of people. And so everything was good.
So now you're still teaching at this time?
I'm teaching privately, exactly.
Okay, and you had met Joe Porcaro.
So Joe was one of the first people I met coming into town, and he was on the first recording I did with Don. I played some percussion and some drums. Joe is such a special guy. Nobody like him. We just last weekend did a Lifetime Achievement Award at our school in honor of Joe, and it was a great evening. Toto played, and his grandson played with his band. Joe played, Emil Richards played. It was really great. And Joe continues to teach, so he's an inspiration. Joe kind of took me under his wing, and you know, showed me the ropes, you know, what the studio thing was like, and you know, paying attention and all that sort of thing, and showing me, you know, talking about the business part of music. So I knew Joe, and you know, he was a teacher as well, and he was beginning to throw some of his students my way. So
that relationship started many years ago, and
many years ago
continues to this day, which is
amazing. To this day. That's right.
That's amazing. So where'd the studio stuff come in? Now you start doing some TV
well,
stuff.
you know, it's like at that time I thought I'm a fringe player now. Okay, there's the core guys, you know, the Hal Blaines, the John Garins, Paul Humphrey, that whole group of people were doing the stuff, right?
Right.
But I was beginning to work my way in. You know, somebody couldn't make a call. I get recommended. Who, where, who knows? But so I worked my way in, doing TV shows, beginning to do a little bit of recording, jingles. So you sort of work your way in, and you become known as somebody who can be depended upon to do the job.
So it's amazing at that time, the opportunity that was there.
Yeah.
And you were just really in the right place at the right time.
I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Preparation meets opportunity.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
You know?
With some of the studio stuff, you started meeting a wide variety of people, like Johnny Gurin, for example.
Yeah, meeting other musicians,
Yeah.
meeting composers, meeting contractors.
Yeah.
You know, all that started to happen. So contractors now, who are the business people in the business, some are musicians, some are not musicians. Some of them saw what I did and saw my demeanor, the fact I took care of business, would put me on their list as somebody that they can depend on to call. So that's how you work your way in with contractors. Then, but more than that, it was other musicians who saw what I did and realized, okay, I'm going to, if I get an opportunity, I'm going to recommend him.
It almost seems like it's still that same way now. As long as you get to know other musicians and you're playing with them and they get to trust you, it's musicians that will bring those contacts throughout the score. But it seems like a very different world now with the youth. They're not out playing as much. I mean, I did jam sessions 3 or 4 times a week in the East Coast.
Me too, yeah.
Just to play.
Just to play.
And you met a new guy, a new sax player. Hey, where you from? Okay, great, you play.
That's it.
And either you clicked personality-wise, or maybe you didn't. But then musically, if you clicked, it didn't matter if you clicked personality-wise because
the music was about the music.
It was about the music, and you hit that. So that was a whole different world. So is that the advice you'd give to students today as far as playing more?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I try to encourage them to do as much playing as possible. Now, being in a school environment, we're giving them that opportunity in the school. But I'm thinking, you guys need to jam. It's not about the money. Put in the time and play as much as you can. Learn as much as you possibly can. I don't know that spirit is happening now as much as it did when we were growing up, because we didn't have the internet. We had books to learn, but other than that, we had to play.
Well, that's the power of it. Really, that is the power of it, just to play. I love your books. Talk about your books that you've written. It's just in the order of how you have them and what you put into them. It's just some great material.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I thought playing with Don was important for me to write this stuff down, what I was learning, and try to put it in some sort of a concept form. It took about 10 years to get the book together. I was riding on the bus constantly, and I had all this stuff, and I'm going, okay, what does it mean? Where does it go? How does it start? And so eventually I was able to put it all together. And so I guess maybe 1978, 79, I thought I had a book. I had somebody represent me, and that person took it to Barnhouse, and Barnhouse said, okay, we can do this. So in 1980, the book was published, Even in the Odds. So it basically is all about my experiences and what I learned with Don Ellis. As far as Zappa's concerned, Zappa was just a continuation of what I had learned with Don. I had already learned that stuff. So it's okay, now I'm just putting it to use.
Beautiful, because I think I have a couple of sheets that you handed out in '76 of that material.
Well, probably I was deep into it at that point, and I was thinking, I'm sharing this with my students. Now I can share it in probably one of the first vocational schools in existence at that time.
And it was just so exciting because this hadn't been done before. And having studied with Morello back in the East Coast, when I came out to the West Coast and saw this material, it was like I said, wow, where is this? Who is this guy? What the heck is he doing? and then my research started with you. It's incredible what you've done with all these different books that you write and continue to write, which is very well needed. Tell me about the school.
1979 probably, Joe Porcaro now calls me and says, I have an opportunity to develop a drum curriculum for a school called Musicians Institute in Hollywood, and they're going to form a Percussion Institute of Technology, PIT. Would you come on board? So I mean, right away it was like, oh, wow, what an opportunity. It's, again, another first, right? And after knowing Joe all that time and the fact that he would call me as opposed to anybody else, I felt great about it. So we would have our meetings. We'd start writing. What do we need to do? What kind of course? So we wrote everything down that we thought we needed, and then we just started writing. And we finally opened up in 1980 with our courses, and we had, I think, originally, I can't remember how many students we had, but we started, constantly edited, adding, subtracting, and eventually, after a year or two, we really had we had the course.
Yeah.
That was a 15-year stint at MI. That school grew leaps and bounds. I met a lot of great players there, Abraham Laboriel.
Yeah.
Actually, I had met Abe before then, in '76. Meeting other teachers,
Yeah.
great teachers like Tommy Tedesco, Joe DiOrio, Bob Magnuson. A whole other experience now. Now I'm putting my knowledge to use in a public situation,
Yeah.
right? So it was a wonderful experience. And by that time, my book had come out, Even in the Odds.
Yeah.
And so I was using that. I had developed a course called Rhythm Studies.
Yeah.
Because I thought, drummers need to know what this is all about, you know? There's playing techniques and there's jazz and there's this and that and the other. But rhythm studies now is something new.
Yeah.
It's a first.
And it's still extremely important in any curriculum in any school.
I believe it is.
Absolutely.
I still continue doing that course at the school in Pasadena.
Wow, the amount of great players that came out of the school at that time, under your and Joe's direction, was amazing.
Amazing.
Great players coming out.
Mm-hmm.
They knew the instrument. They were good people. You gave them the guidance of the full life and music, scope, which was amazing.
Right.
What happened after that now?
As I was teaching, I was getting more and more into studio work, and then there were other road opportunities. In '76, I went on the road with Seals and Crofts, and did more of a sort of pop kind of a gig.
Yeah.
And so because I liked all music. I enjoyed good music.
Yeah.
Right. I loved their music. I had an opportunity to do that. Jeff Porcaro had played with them, and his brother Mike and I got a chance to play in that band, and I had a ball doing that. Met some other great musicians, and then in 1980, where I feel like that's where my career in the session world took off, because I got connected. Well, I knew Jay Graydon, the great guitar player producer, his partner David Foster, who I met subbing on the Roxy Horror Show at the Roxy way back when. David just come to town, and I thought, what an amazing piano player this guy is.
Yeah, and writer and everything.
Everything. So he and Jay now connected up, and they're producing Al Jarreau, Manhattan Transfer. So I get a chance to record with these people, and then end up going on the road with them. So now I'm feeling I've changed my direction a little bit from strictly jazz or Frank Zappa to more mainstream stuff.
Yeah.
Playing for big audiences, playing great gigs, playing with great musicians, meeting other great bands that are on the same bill. It was fantastic.
A different time. We speak about at these interviews the business side. How did you manage all that? I mean, here you're going out of town, coming back in town, maintaining the studio work.
Right.
Sometimes when you're out of town, you could lose some dates there, but you have managed to balance everything. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How?
And family life.
That's the other side of it. You're exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, I married a woman who is an artist, understands the creative mind, allowed me to pursue my career, which was multifaceted. I mean, studio work, teaching privately and publicly, going on the road, writing. I mean, the whole gamut. Raising kids, and it's like, wow, how do you do all this?
How'd you balance it? How'd you organize it all?
I don't know that you can call it organization. It's just life. I mean, you hope that it all works out, and there's a lot of understanding that goes down. You start to get, I mean, I thought probably couldn't be busier, because I'm still, doing this club, that club, because I want to play. It was all about playing. Whether it was in the studio, whether it was on the road playing with the band, whether it was jamming, whether it was in a club making $50, it didn't really matter.
Talk about some of the personal constitution that you have, because you're always on time, you're always professional, you're always prepared, you always have everything ready, and you're there, easy to depend on you. Where did that all come from?
Seeing the folks that didn't do that, what happened to them, and in the business that I'm in, you really learn about being responsible when you have to be at a studio at 9 o'clock in the morning, downbeat. We're going. We're recording. You can't show up at 9:10. It just doesn't work. With drummers, you got to get there early. With the cartage system, you had your drums delivered, thank God, but you still had to make your adjustments. The engineer wanted to get a sound check before everything started, so you get there, at least 45 minutes ahead of time to take care of that business, get your cup of coffee, and you're ready to go.
What inspires you now?
Music.
It always has.
Great music inspires me.
Still does.
Whether it's from the past or whether it's current, and I try to listen to a lot of good current music. I'm teaching students that they know about music that some of it I don't know about. So I get turned on from them. You need to check out so-and-so. Well, so I do, and I go, oh, pretty interesting stuff. But I'm still able to turn them on to new stuff that maybe they're still not familiar with.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't know. Maybe the listening skills aren't as good as they used to be. Taking the time to sit down and listen, because I mean everybody basically has their buds on, and music now is in their background. It's secondary. For us, we sat down, opened the LP, read the liner notes, and listened, and then listened again.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Absolutely. And those days of moving the needle over, as corny as that sounds,
I know.
we were driven to do that because we wanted to hear that section. That was the only way you could do that.
I got to hear that again.
Exactly right. You know, the music school program seems like it's been a big part of your life to kind of get you started. And we're losing those music school programs.
Well,
daily.
we lost 2 just recently.
Yeah. So how do you think kids are going to, they're not being driven with music at an early age? Where do you think what's going to happen with that?
Well, what happened, I think, we got our experience by playing. Now students are learning, people are learning in school.
Yeah.
You know, it's not street learning anymore. It's learning in school, and then of course on the web, you have everything that you want. I think education is really, really important wherever you get it.
Yeah.
You know, and we get it in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, the opportunities don't seem to be as much as they used to be. Bands are no longer on the road. You know, bands have gotten older, they've retired. It's hard to go on the road because the money is not even as good as it used to be. I think it's important when students come to my school, our school, they just want to be better. That's all. That's their motivation. Now it's not, you know, I want to work in the studios.
Yeah.
That used to be a dream of students of mine.
Yeah.
Now they realize, well, that's not there anymore. You know, not nearly as much as it used to be. So they have other reasons for coming to school, you know, and okay, that's great. If you're in a seat, I'm going to teach you. So I'm not necessarily worried about, you know, why the student is there. My job is to teach, to motivate, to inspire, make them a better player, encourage them to play.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, those are the things that, because I think people still love to play.
That's still there.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's what got me started.
But you do that so well at the Los Angeles College of Music. You do that so well by keeping the enthusiasm of playing music alive.
Right.
In closing, what would you say to this next generation? Let's think about this. People watch this here in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
What would you say that you have, from your experience and what you're seeing as an educator, as an incredibly intense performer, what kind of advice would you give them for them to follow their passion?
Things are moving so fast in our world. Technology has changed everything. How you get your information, how you entertain yourself is all different. It's hard to predict what's going to happen. You know, I mean, lots of things are going online. Education is going online.
Yeah.
So you can stay at home now and learn, you know, and maybe even get a degree.
Yeah.
The motivation to actually come to a brick and mortar might change. Maybe the whole thing's going to change.
Yeah.
Maybe the whole thing's going to be online. Everything.
Right.
You know, because you don't need to go anywhere anymore.
Absolutely.
You know, I would just say whatever your way of learning is, you know, learn. You know, pay attention, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But I still think it comes down to an element of passion. You know, as opposed to something that's outside of you and it doesn't interest in you. Why would you learn an instrument if you're not really curious and passionate about what it is and why you want to learn it and whatnot? So, you know, the motivation now may not be, I want that job at the end of this.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the motivation anymore. Or it used to be part of the motivation. I mean, I wanted to be in the business of playing, you know. I mean, you know, I wanted to earn a living. Thank God I did, you know, and still trying to. But those days are not these days. And the future, it's a good question. I don't really know, you know. All I can do is do what I do and continue to inspire students, teach them what I know. I think it's important to tell them everything I know. You know, I don't hold anything back.
And for sure you don't, because I can remember back in those early days in '76 when I heard you play. You inspired me then. You inspire me now. Thank you so much on behalf of the Sessions, Ralph. You are absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.